Welcome to the Camino Cafe podcast. I'm Lee Brennan, your host. Great episode with Steve and Carol Lytch. This episode is jam-packed with information about walking the Camino, but what I really found interesting about it is their passion for being pilgrims as well as their passion for giving back to the Camino community. First of all, Steve is the chair of the board for the American Pilgrims on the Camino. And the two of them, when they're not walking, they're volunteering at Ribadiso. Actually, as bonus content to this interview, I went out to Ribadiso while they were volunteering, and you can see that episode on our YouTube channel and see for yourself what they're doing out at Ribadiso. It's amazing. And also, there will be 20 Camino questions on the audio podcast as well as the YouTube channel. During the chat, we talk about Ribadiso. We also talk about their own Caminos. And you know, this all started just because someone by chance gave them a Camino guidebook for Christmas. And that started a lifetime passion for the Camino. I can't wait for you to meet Steve and Carol, so let's get going. Joining us from Pennsylvania. Welcome to the Camino Cafe, both of you.
Thanks. Great to be here.
It's so good to see your faces again. The last time I saw you, I got to visit you in Ribadiso, and what a pleasure that was, getting to visit the albergue and actually see what you were doing. So thank you for letting me come out and kind of crash your day that day.
It was fun. It was great to see you.
Great. It was really fun. And just a reminder to everyone, the footage of us at Ribadiso will be posted later, so make sure you check that out. So I kind of wanted to get to a little bit more about the two of you, because when I met with you, well, I guess it's almost been a few months ago, time is flying by, we tended to talk more about what you were doing there versus your own Camino. So I thought today I wanted everyone to kind of get to know the two of you a little bit better. So I thought we would start with, how long have you guys been together?
Well, we've been married 42 years.
Been married 42 years. How did you guys meet?
In seminary.
Did you really?
We were both in graduate school in theology, preparing for ministry, and Steve was in his third year and I started my first year, and we met right away and played squash together, and that's how we
haven't played squash since. So
you only played that first time?
Well, we played a little bit, but we found other things to keep us occupied, like the Camino.
Yeah, no kidding. So you've been married for 42 years and you've been Presbyterian ministers during all this time.
Right. And I've also been in academics.
Goodness.
I was a president of a seminary in Lancaster, Pennsylvania for 9 years. That's when I retired. Okay.
All right. Wonderful. So how did you guys first hear of the Camino in the first place? Were you together when you heard about it?
Oh, yeah. Yes. You go ahead.
Well, so our daughter was living in Spain, and her in-laws gave us the first Christmas that they were together for Christmas. They gave us a guidebook on the Camino. This was in 2007. And so we would go over there every summer to visit for a couple of weeks. And the next summer we thought, well, this sounds like fun. Be kind of fun to, know this country where our daughter's living and learn more about it. And so we took the bus up to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port and we walked over to Pamplona, and that really kind of got us hooked. Yeah.
Wow. So that was about 2008 or so?
That was 2008. Yeah.
And did your daughter walk with you, or?
No. She had done it before. When she did a college term over in Spain, and at the tail end of it, did a little bit with a group. But no, we did it on our own, and then just about every summer after that, when we went to visit, we'd do a 3 or 4 days. We did it in stages, and then in 2017, a friend and I, we started in Saint Jean, and in 16, Carol and I had made it as far as Sarria. Mm-hmm. And so in 17, my friend and I started in Saint Jean, and we walked to Sarria, where Carol and her friend met us, and we all finished up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then we've done a couple of other Caminos since then.
All right. I love how you started it, because I think particularly since we will be talking a lot about American Pilgrims, I'm sure, a lot of Europeans walk in just the fashion that you first described, right? They come into Spain if they don't already live in Spain, and they just walk a couple of stages, maybe over the course of a weekend or a week, to where I feel like back when I was living in the US, it was like, oh no, you have to come and walk the whole distance, do your whole Camino at once. So it's kind of cool how you started in more of a European fashion, if you will.
Yeah, well, we were fortunate, we were going over there every summer anyway to visit family. So yeah, it was a nice way to do it.
And it's a family affair.
Yeah.
If you think about it from our daughter and son-in-law's perspective, here come the in-laws, and then they can conveniently disappear after spending a few days, and you get a break from the in-laws, and then return to Madrid and see them again.
Yeah,
it worked out all around.
Yeah. And it's kind of perfect to go take a walk after you've been visiting family, right?
Yeah, it is. You don't want to come like fish, start to get old after a few days. So it worked out very nicely.
Well, that's cool. So now, here you guys are both ministers, and you go out and you walk this spiritual religious pilgrimage. And I wonder what about it appealed to you from your spiritual or religious side?
Well, I think the idea of pilgrimage was something I never really explored. And it is a very prominent practice in Christian faith to walk, take journeys. Think of Jesus walking around Galilee and Judea. And think about Moses in the wilderness, leading a group of people walking. So it really has substance within our tradition as a place of preparation, transformation, trial, and difficulty in many cases. Simplicity. You can't carry a lot, and it's you're not rooted in one place. You are part of a group of people, which can be like a family, and we certainly experience that on the Camino families that developed. So I think for me, just an opportunity to explore pilgrimage was very rich. And then you begin to see your whole life as a pilgrimage. And that also, I think, is a very good metaphor that's expansive and gives an opportunity to think of your life and its ups and downs and its abundance and its simplicity and all the different aspects of it that are similar.
Yeah, one image that I found really engaging was I was visiting last year with the dean of the cathedral in Santiago, and he was talking about how all people are welcome on the Camino. And he compared it to an image that Jesus used in the New Testament about, behold, I stand at the door and knock, and whoever opens the door, I'll come in and eat with them. And he said that the Camino is sort of like the door. And whether you hear Jesus knocking in the beautiful nature or the community that you find, or the history that you engage, or just the physical challenge and the kinds of things that you undergo. And sometimes you may or may not recognize, that person for, who he is by name, but there's a deep spiritual component there that manifests itself in many different ways. Anyway, the dean was saying that he feels like on the Camino, they're sort of offering the door for inviting people to engage with that spiritual reality and depth. And I feel like, as you know, people do that in all kinds of different ways.
Yeah, what a beautiful way to look at that. I've never heard anyone say that, but if you knock on the door.
Yeah, right.
Right? Wow. So how did it, do you think, played into your own personal, Carol, you were saying something about seeing your whole life as a pilgrimage. Do you feel like you started looking at your own life differently after you walked that first Camino?
Oh, very definitely. I think you maybe reflect on what comes up that you don't expect, and you learn to trust God for what maybe you don't have that you need, and also the tremendous generosity of other pilgrims on the Camino was very moving to me. I remember on our first Camino, on a Sunday morning, we left, kicked out of the albergue, and there were no breakfast places open. And I really like breakfast. I can't do anything if I don't have a cup of coffee, but we had
And you both.
anyway. So someone, just pulled out some granola bars from her backpack, and she said, "Here, have a granola bar." And I remember thinking, wow, this sustains me. I can do this, because she just so generously handed out granola bars, and we managed.
Oh.
And then there were a couple of young people in their front yard. They had a big carafe of coffee, and they were actually selling it. Not much money, but again, the coffee. So you feel like you kind of are surprised by how something you didn't know you needed was provided in a way that you didn't expect.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like everybody's selling coffee out in the yard, right? So the very morning you needed it.
Exactly. It was so cute. I thought they were really terrific young people.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. Can you think of any practices? I don't know. Do you have certain practices or prayers that you both use on a daily basis when you're walking? I'm always curious about people's rituals and what they, how they go about inserting things into their walks. Are you the type of people that do that sort of thing?
Well, I think it kind of comes, for me, it comes naturally. Like just after you've been walking for a little while, sort of getting the rhythm of your pace and beginning to kind of feel that with the rhythm of your body. And then in the midst of that, maybe a song or a hymn will sort of rise up, and you'll catch on to that, or a thought or something. And it's just sort of that that focus on keeping up the rhythm and the pace, I think, just provides a kind of a space where you're not doing something that's sort of really task oriented. I mean, you're trying to get to a place, obviously, but I think, I don't know, it's experiencing life, I think, in a different kind of context, a different kind of way, that just enjoying the gift of being, the gift of just living and soaking in whatever the Camino presents to you without really having to do much of anything about it. I guess one of the big things for me then is accepting and experiencing grace. I guess that would be sort of my practice, my Camino practice, and every day that shows itself in a different kind of way. Whether it's getting a cup of coffee from these young kids, or just having the quiet, or just feeling your body working well. That's.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, are there special prayers? Not for me in particular. We're already in kind of regular practice of reading what we call the daily lectionary, which is a set of scripture passages that are shared widely. So that it's kind of fun, because you can talk about what you read that morning and someone else will have read the same thing. So we pretty much continued that pilgrimage, because that's just a regular part of our lives, no matter where we are. I think one thing I loved was the Beatitudes of the Camino.
Yes.
Each of those lines is just so rich, and I find reviewing those to be meaningful. our son walked the Appalachian Trail this summer.
Uh-huh.
And we talked a lot about the similarities and differences with the Appalachian Trail, which is over 2,000 miles.
Yeah.
And hiking mountains is not walking.
Right.
But he had an experience toward the end of walking the Appalachian Trail where he sacrificed a little bit of his walk in order to accompany two trail mates that he had gotten to know, kind of like a Camino family. The three of
Yeah.
them became an Appalachian Trail family. And one of them had a grandparent who was dying and needed to leave early, so they had to accelerate the completion. And there's one of the Camino Beatitudes, which is, it's not so important that you finish, it matters that you finish together. And I sent that line to my son, and he deeply appreciated that, because there are some things from the Camino that apply to all of life and to other similar treks that people take.
That's really nice. And I just made a note. I'll be sure to share the Beatitudes of the Camino in the show notes so everyone can refer back if you haven't heard those before. I wanted to touch upon a little bit something you said, Steve. Why is it, do you think, we have the opportunity to, be giving grace all the time, of experiencing things, but yet we don't in everyday life sometimes? What is it about the Camino that you believe helps us or causes us to be in that space, to be more aware and to be able to experience this kind of thing you're talking about?
Well, I mean, it's what, anthropologists call a liminal space. It's a space that's sort of in between. And, there are other places like that you can experience that space. That's, it's neither here nor there, and you're sort of out of your regular routine. So you allow things to happen that wouldn't ordinarily. But I think the thing that some of the things that make the Camino special is, when you've got, the hundreds and hundreds of years of history. And so there's just these constant reminders along the way that, in addition to the natural beauty, you've got these connections with, pilgrims who've been doing this for 1,000 years or so. So I think that's really an important part of it. And I think for us both, the community that's formed, because everybody, a lot of people who go on the Camino are there because they're looking for some kind of a transformational experience, to work through something that's happened in their lives, to figure out how to manage a life transition. I mean, not everybody. I mean, that's not why we started it, but we engaged and kind of got involved in that community and realized that it kind of worked on us as well. So I just think that the community, the history, the spiritual context that you're in, I think makes you more open to acknowledging those moments of grace that come to us. You're right, all the time. And I think coming back from the Camino, I'm more open to notice those. In some ways, it's kind of like practicing. It's practicing receiving grace. And part of the way you practice that is through simplicity, because you're not, you can get by with just, what you got in your pack, and you have these other people who are on a similar journey to support you and share it with you. So.
Yeah, powerful answer. I can already see a little bit of how the Camino has transformed your lives, because you've got super involved with the American Pilgrims on the Camino, which we'll talk about more in a bit. You not only have walked numerous times, each of you together and on your own, but also you are spending time coming to Spain to just volunteer and help pilgrims at Ribadiso. And so I can already see that transformation. And I'm wondering if you can kind of walk us through, like, how did all that come about, that, you're handed this guidebook from the in-laws one holiday, right? At Christmas, I think you said. And all of a sudden now, I mean, look at the two of you. You are very involved members of the Camino community. So how did that transformation, you think, take place?
I think Steve should answer, because he really is very deep in the leadership.
Gee, just kind of happens,
Did you just go to a gathering one year and it was like?
I mean, the gathering was a big piece of it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the way I got involved with the organization was I volunteered to do some editing on La Concha, which is the newsletter, and then went to the summer before I did the whole Camino Frances in 2017. I went to my first gathering, and these are great people. These are the same kind of people that we were with when we walked the Camino, and here they are, and they're still wonderful people to be around. And then somebody said you ought to apply to the board, and kind of that one thing led to another. So I mean, I think institutionally that's how it came to pass. But in terms of our internal commitment, and just like Carol said, it's kind of a metaphor. The Camino is kind of a metaphor for life, and kind of gives you a framework for engaging with life. It's not the only metaphor, the only way of engaging, but it's a pretty powerful one. And like I said, you go and you practice receiving grace, and when you come home, you're just a little bit better at it. So we like to keep sharp in that sense.
Well, I would imagine so with your jobs, right?
Well, yeah, that too.
Have you seen changes in each other since you've become pilgrims?
Wow, I'm not sure. I think just to have a shared adventure like this is amazing, and we refer back to it all the time. Something is like the Camino. So I would say it just draws us closer to have such a powerful experience together, and to have the same reference points, the same stories.
Yeah, and I think for each of us, it is probably more than a kind of a transformative experience. It's been maybe more of a revelatory experience, that we just feel like we're closer to who we are when we're on the Camino, or when we're doing something involved with the Camino. It just kind of resonates with our values, our perspective on life. And I mean, I know some people do the Camino and they're kind of are transformed, and that's
right.
But I think for us, it's been more of kind of an uncovering, a revelation, a deepening of kind of the people who we understand ourselves to be.
Well, I really like that word, revelatory. I haven't really had anyone say that as a description. I think it's perfect. A revealing of who you are at your best essence.
Well, yeah, and who people are, and who the nature is, and who all kinds of things. I think you see it at their best, and even when you run into difficulties along the Camino, and even difficult people along the way, because there are there are jerks who walk the Camino just like everywhere else. But if you say it's a metaphor for life, it's what life is. Life's not perfect. The Camino is not perfect. When I finished doing the whole Frances in 2017, I limped into Santiago because I injured my knee wearing bad shoes, and when I came back, I had to do physical therapy for 3 months. But that's just part of life, and we overcame it. And,
Yeah. I wonder in your ministry work, I would imagine if I were one of you, I might be thinking, boy, these people really need to walk a Camino. Like, is it something that you recommend often?
Yeah.
Have you guys taken any groups?
No, we haven't. We haven't taken a group.
Yeah. I would imagine that your congregation might be begging you at times to.
People have mentioned it, would like to do that.
Well, we did bring our seminary roommates. So
we brought friends,
Yeah, for the last segment of the Camino that Steve mentioned, he came with his seminary roommate from 30 some years ago at Princeton Seminary. And I came with my seminary roommate from 30 some years ago from Princeton Seminary. And so the four of us, it was like this reunion after, well, we'd been in touch over the years, but we lived in different states. And so I forget why I said this, but we did bring other people, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
We haven't organized groups to take.
Yeah.
And,
No, we haven't done that. Yeah.
But this sounds fascinating.
Well, some of that may be selfishness, because when you're a group leader, you're responsible for all kinds of things. And I really admire, we have a lot of people involved in American Pilgrims, right? Some of our founders and really involved people now do that. And I think at the gathering this year, we're talking about having a symposium for people who lead groups.
Cool.
So I think that's just a wonderful thing. And it's something I'd like, maybe American Pilgrims to get a little bit more involved in helping people do that. But, whenever we've done it, I guess it's just kind of selfish. I kind of want to go.
I understand. I kind of feel the same way, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a different experience.
It's
still can be a great experience, but it's a different experience.
Yeah.
Which, okay, so so many questions I want to follow up on, so many topics here. So first one is how fascinating for both of you to walk with your seminarian roommates all these years later. What was that like? I mean, first, Steve, you start with yours and then you meet up then with Carol and hers. I would imagine that had to be very revelatory as well, right? Like,
well, I don't know. It was kind of fun. It was kind of like reliving, 30 some years before. We could just have the same fun and bantering and conversations and, kind of picking up where, like I said, we've been in touch, but you just kind of build on, that relationship that we had, shared so deeply so many years before.
Steve's roommate wrote a poem every day. So he was talented at, he'd kind of walk a little bit ahead occasionally, and he'd be punching out a poem on his iPhone. And then he'd present his poem, which was really fun. And he was also an extrovert off the charts. So Larry was meeting everybody, which was kind of fun to be with him. I enjoyed being with my seminary roommate because we just had more time after all these years.
yes.
We had a way of really deepening our friendship. We didn't mention that we also brought our son on one of the trips, and he was, I think, still in college.
Right, I was a couple of years out of college. Yeah.
And so he's also an extrovert off the charts. And even though he couldn't speak Spanish, he had a way of connecting with everybody in the albergue. He would bring us all the news because he had met everybody. That was just his personality. And we still talk about that fun time with him. That was one of the best segments of the Camino for us.
Yeah, a few months ago, I was reading a book by somebody who had done the Camino, guy about our age with his daughter, who was about our son's age, and they met up with some other young people, and we went to bed, and we didn't know what they did, but I came across this book and I was flipping through it and I saw these pictures of our son and all these other young people out doing crazy things at night, you know.
In this book?
In the book, yeah.
Your son?
Our son, yeah.
Our son,
yeah.
yes.
He's in the book.
Yeah, he's in the book, you know, in pictures. And
Well, if you have to find
enough time
pictures
had
of-
gone by. Enough time had gone by that we, you know, we couldn't get mad at him. You know, like sneaking out of the albergue and the nuns
Well-
locking him out and having to spend the night in the bus station. But
Well, if you have to find pictures of your kid doing something, at least it's just Camino
Fine.
stuff. So it's probably not the worst things that could happen.
yeah, it was okay. It was okay. You know, one funny story though about this Camino, when my friend Larry and I were walking it, we happened to meet up with a Jesuit priest who was trying to discern. He was a young guy. He was probably in his early 30s, trying to discern kind of what his next stage, his next calling was going to be. And he was in graduate school, and he grew up in Boston, a rabid Boston sports fan, and he really knew that he needed to let go of Boston so that he could follow God's calling to wherever he was supposed to go. And so we got to the Cristofero, and he walked up to the Cristofero, and you know what he left at the Cristofero? He left dirt from the infield of Fenway Park.
That's great.
That was his way of saying, Lord, I'll give up the Red Sox, you know, to go wherever you take me.
Oh my goodness. Do you think he's really given up all the Boston stuff?
Well, you know, yeah, because then he went to Toronto, but as an evidence of God's providence, Toronto's in the same division as the Red Sox. So he got to see his Red Sox play anyway. So
I was wondering, I wouldn't think that God would make you give that
yeah,
up.
see, the
I mean,
Camino provides. So
yes, it does.
yeah.
Okay, so here's something I'm curious about. So you've walked together as a couple, and you've also walked with your seminarian friends. I wonder if you have some advice for folks out there that are getting ready to walk with a spouse or a partner or a friend, because that's different than walking solo. So I wonder if you have some advice on, hey, if you're getting ready to do this, here's some things to kind of think about to make sure it's as good of experience as possible for everyone involved.
Well, there are just so many options. I mean, you can go with a spouse, a partner, a friend, but then you meet so many other friends. You make friends. And I think if you talk in advance about how you feel about being outgoing, you know, do you want to make it just your own personal pilgrimage? Or is this an opportunity to meet people from other countries, people who don't even speak your language, but you can still communicate? Are you really need sort of the alone time or the intense interpersonal time, or do you really prefer to reach out? I love to be with other people. You know, I think it's really a great opportunity to meet, you know, Italian medical school students and people from Brittany, France, who are retired, and people from Korea and all over the world. So I really loved learning about other people's lives.
Yeah.
But I can imagine where some people would consider it more private.
Yeah,
So-
that's really good advice.
Yeah, well, I've done a couple of other Caminos on my own, like the part of the Norte and the Sanabrés, where there are a lot less people than on the Frances. And, you know, there you run into folks who are more on kind of more of an inward journey, I think, than a lot of the folks we met on the Frances. But in terms of, I don't know, because like I said, I've done solo and I've done with Carol and I've done with a friend. And I don't know, maybe just because we're so simpatico, it doesn't make that much difference, but my preparation was pretty much the same.
Okay.
every time. I pack better when Carol goes with me because she's more attentive to, you know, what goes in the pack, you know.
Like you don't forget some basics.
Better prepared, right.
Better prepared when you go with her versus
Yes,
if
right.
you're going on your
You know,
own.
in terms of having stuff, you know, like Band-Aids and things like that. So.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say stereotypically, do you do the guy thing like I'm not gonna need that, and then Carol's like, oh come on,
Yeah,
I think you need that.
Yeah, I bring it all.
That's true. Yeah.
Bring the
It's me and your boat.
Right.
Bring the sewing kit, bring
Yeah.
in the bug spray, you know,
Right.
all those.
Yeah. Well, I just wondered, like, as a couple too, you know, like, you know, sometimes you can go on car trips and one person doesn't want to ask for directions or wants to be in control all the time, or is the one that always reads, you know, the GPS. It, you know, do those kinds of issues come up for you as a couple, even where you're kind of like, okay, I gotta.
Well, yes, because it happens at home too. Steve doesn't
Right.
ask directions, and I'm always in favor of asking directions.
Yeah, me too.
And Steve is also very good at finding his way places. So, you know, we kind of balance each other. If he doesn't want to ask directions, he can probably figure it out anyway. So we just laugh about it because it's a pretty well-established pattern that we have.
It's a lot different, you know. Speaking of directions and all, it's different now from what it was when we first started. When we first started to do the Camino in 2008, we were really very popular and odd because we had a guidebook.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, and we could. It was a Spanish guide. It was in English, but it was published in Spain. And we could tell people, you know, this is where we are on the map, and people were so fascinated because we actually had a map of where we were.
Really?
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine, but
Yeah. When we first started, when we first left Saint Jean, a lot of people were standing around trying to figure out, well, where do we go from here? And somebody said, "Does this yellow arrow mean anything?"
No.
Yeah. And we all kind of figured that out. So that's how far I think we've come.
Yeah.
Since 2008, and of course now part of the game for me sometimes is trying to figure out where on the digital app I am, and how do we sort of find our way back. And sometimes that's kind of a game, kind of fun. But of course that's how most people do it now. You download your Wise Pilgrim or whatever.
Right. It's fun to even think about the fact of how much has changed really since that first time you walked to 2022, which really isn't that long ago when you first walked. But what would you say has been a positive that you've seen, and maybe something that you're like, might have been a little bit better in 2007, do those things ever run through your mind?
Well, it comes back to when, like back in my day.
Yeah.
And one thing that was so striking to me is when we started out, you couldn't make reservations anywhere. So there was a real sense of urgency, were you going to have a bed? And so you were pretty motivated to get out there early in the morning and to reach some kind of destination, so that you knew for sure you were going to have a place to sleep. And I guess it didn't bother some people because they brought a mat to sleep on and a sleeping bag, and they could go either way, but we didn't have that. So it just amazed me over the years to see people have reservations at albergues. Not all of them, but you can. But nowadays it seems like maybe Americans tend to make the reservations too. They probably have a return flight already booked. They know they have a deadline, so they don't have the luxury of being a free spirit. We'll just stay an extra day, or
right.
We'll just go halfway today. They really need to be on schedule. So I think that to me is one of the big differences.
Yeah, let's talk. Yeah,
of where you're going to sleep. That was important to me at the beginning of being on a pilgrimage and not knowing where you're going to sleep. That was part of the challenge. that was
Yeah.
Another difference is that, when we first started out, we'd come back and we'd tell people that never heard of it, tell us that's interesting. Wow, that's something. But nowadays it's becoming more and more common to say, yeah, that's something I want to do one day. It's much better known, and people aspire to do it. It's on more and more bucket lists.
Yes, for sure. So you don't really have to tell people what it is now. They just want to
Right.
hear about it or get your
Right.
advice, I'm imagining.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you just said, Carol, that I'm really curious about, because, I know myself as a pilgrim, even if I have my reservation, I can still be somewhat obsessed about getting there to that reservation, even though I have a guaranteed bed. And I'm trying to imagine what I would have been like as a pilgrim back in 2008 when I had no reservation and had to kind of feel the pressure of having to get to a bed. I'm wondering, and Steve, you kind of talked about some of this too, is like maybe the reservations are a good thing, because can you be more in the moment because you don't have that worry? Like, is this a good development in your mind, or do you miss the fun old days of back in 2007? Not that they're so old, but do you miss that? Or do you think now you can be a little more present because you don't have that worry? You don't have to race because you can have a reservation.
I think there's some truth in that. I mean, some of it is I'm that much older too, so I'm just maybe not quite as adventurous, but no, I think that's a really good point, because that's a big debate in the Pilgrim community.
Yes, it is.
Do we just trust the Camino to provide, or do we go ahead and make reservations and buy into that whole process? I mean, one of the things that is a little concerning is the whole donativo spirit of being able to give as give and receive just as you need. And everybody makes their own Camino, and I think it just that's an individual call that people have to make if they want to have sort of the free zone of not knowing for sure where you're going to rest, or if you just want to have that. And I've done it both ways, and there is a certain freedom in knowing that you got a place at the end of the day, and you don't have to worry about getting there, and you can just take your sweet time and really enjoy what's going on. And then there's a certain pleasure in saying, yes, I got a bed provided. So
yeah,
I think it depends on the kind of experience that you want to have.
Yeah, and I will add to this for everyone that there have been times that I already had a reservation and I wish I hadn't had it because I wanted to keep walking.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
That does constrain your flexibility.
Yeah.
I think it feels more like a pilgrimage when there are more uncertainties. It feels a little bit more like a vacation when you have a place reserved and a certainty of food and bed. I remember back in the old days, Steve and I were walking the Camino, and we could have stopped for a bed. And we said, no, we'll just push on. Let's do it. So we pushed on, and then my foot started to hurt. My blisters got really bad. I was limping. It started to rain, and we stopped at an old monastery, and we noticed a pilgrimage just got ahead of us. And we arrived and we found out that there was only one bed instead of two. So we had to keep going, and I was limping, and we had to go up this steep hill to the city. And we discovered that both of the albergues in that city were already full. So we kept investigating and finally found, what do you call it?
A Casa Rural.
And so, it was a really difficult experience, but then you have one of those life lessons of learning to pace yourself. And I remember telling myself, I never want to forget this experience because we should have paced ourselves. We should have stayed at the albergue that we first came to, that had room for us, instead of thinking we were superhuman and we could just keep pushing, which is what we tend to do in life anyway, is push.
Mm-hmm.
So, you learn a life lesson in that kind of experience. And the Camino is full of things like that, lessons that you want to remember and live by.
Well, you raise a good point about how those trials and tribulations kind of make it the pilgrimage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder about the two of you. You already work jobs of service, right? You're servicing all the time in what you do. And you guys could have chosen really to go on vacation anywhere and have spent time anywhere during those weeks that you came to Spain to work at Ribadiso. So what is it that attracted you to come and volunteer and spend those 2 weeks working?
Well, we just loved the Camino, and it seemed like a real privilege to be able to go back and experience it in a different way. And especially to go to Ribadiso, which is such a magnificent site. It founded in the 16th century by Franciscans as a hospital. And it's on the Iso River, which we say river, but it's only about knee deep, with an old bridge going over the river. And it's such a gem of a place to be. We love Spain. We love the Camino. The opportunity to serve others was meaningful.
I think the Camino is just life-giving, in a way that, I'm all for, relaxing vacations and sitting by the beach. Love to do that too. But I think the Camino is life-giving in a way that, other things you might do are not. Just again, because the sort of the richness and the depth and of life that you experience, and the other people that you interact with. So, that's why we chose it. Yeah.
Were you going to add something, Carol?
When we were in Ribadiso, it was kind of a retreat, and we had a lot of free time in the morning. And I was reading a book by Victoria Sweet called God's Hospital. And she's a doctor who worked in an alms hospital in San Francisco for poor people, indigent people, drug addicts, people who couldn't afford medical care. And she also walked the Camino. That was part of, that was part of her story, which I didn't know about when I started reading it. But there was another important linkage too, which was just the idea that we were at what was originally a Franciscan hospital. And Dr. Victoria Sweet pointed out that hospital and hospitality are from the same word, hospus, which means both host and guest. So that there is a reciprocity where the guest becomes the host to the host, and that is part of the idea of hospitality. And that concept has changed over time. I think nowadays we don't expect the guest to give back, but originally that was part of the idea of hospus. So just thinking a lot about that, giving back, and what a privilege it is to give back, and that it kind of equalizes people when both people are hosts and not one receives and one gives.
The hospitaleros, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I get to see you guys in action doing just that. And I wonder, I saw such joy in both of you as you were greeting pilgrims that were coming in that day to check in. And that was, I think, pretty early on in your assignment there. I wonder, are there any memorable things that happened or anything that transformed you? Like, while it was not a Camino, it was service on the Camino. Was there anything that happened that you felt was kind of transforming for you by having this type of experience?
Well, one thing I noticed, we were told specifically that one of our responsibilities was to hand out cups of water
Yeah.
and candy to people who arrived. And it was especially that experience of handing someone a cup of water. You know, they're hot, they're tired, they've arrived at the albergue, their destination. Sometimes they even had a water bottle with them that had water in it. But when you hand them a cup of water, it's kind of like a gesture of care, of personal care, and serving their thirst, slaking their thirst, even if they're not that thirsty, just to receive it. The giving and the receiving is meaningful. And and because Steve's the one who really knows Spanish and I don't, so I don't know a lot of Spanish words, but I would say agua, and they would say gracias. And then I learned to say nada, which means you're welcome. So, you know, it was kind of this nice little ritual that was very meaningful to me, you know, repeated over and over again every day for 2.5 weeks with all those people.
Yeah.
And
Would
I
you
think
add anything?
some of the people we met were inspirational. Like there was this one elderly couple, I would say they were pushing 80, if not already there. And they were riding a tandem bicycle that they had started riding.
At 80?
Yeah, way back in
Toulouse.
France, Toulouse, I think. They started in Toulouse, France.
They were from Brittany.
They were from Brittany, and they started riding their bicycle in Toulouse. And, you know, they came and they were just delightful people. And then a couple of days later, they were through again because they were riding back to Toulouse.
No.
On their bike,
Yes.
you know.
No.
You know, and just that's what I want to do when I grow up, you know, to be able to do that. And just some inspirational people like that. You know, there were a number of parent and child constellations who were walking, and that was just really fun to see. You could just sort of tell that a special kind of bonding was going on between, you know, a mother and a daughter, or some parents and children. You know, there were a few people who were just kind of in it because they were out for a good time, and they're the ones who left the cigarette butts around you had to pick up. But, you know, again, the Camino is like life, so you got all kinds. But I think just, you know, some of the people that we got to glimpse their Camino was really inspirational.
I bet so. So now each year at Ribadiso, there's what I think you maybe mentioned something. It's a 2-week shift, and maybe we send 10 groups of volunteers.
Yeah, from mid-May through mid-October, a quincena, you know. And so, you know, from the 1st through the 15th and the 16th through the end of the month.
Okay.
So yeah, that's about 10 groups, I think, that comes out.
And can people still apply for that if they want to come and do that in 2023, or are those already booked?
Oh, no. I think after the first of the year, if you go to the website, you'll probably get if you're a member of American Pilgrims, you got to be a member to do it.
Okay, that was my next question. What's the requirement?
Go ahead and join, and you'll be eligible.
Okay. And they have to have walked, I'm assuming.
Yes, you have to have walked. You have to have walked in, and you have to have stayed in a donativo.
Okay.
At least I think a couple of donativos.
Okay.
So you kind of understand the spirit, because that's what Ribadiso is, because you can't make a reservation for Ribadiso. And the funny thing is, we had people coming back to Ribadiso because all the other albergues where you could make reservations were full. They hadn't been able to make them. But we never filled up the whole quincena that we were there.
You're kidding.
No.
It looked so crowded the day I was there with you.
Well, yeah. No, we never filled up. We could hold 64.
Oh, true. And, that's a huge place, right? Yeah. But lovely. So lovely.
Right. But after the first of the year, if you go to our website, go to volunteer opportunities, there's a link there where you can be in contact and get an application, and we'll be interviewing folks after the first of the year.
All right. So there's an application and an interviewing
Yeah, you fill out an
process.
application, there's a Zoom interview.
Oh, cool. Okay. I'm just making a note right now to remember to put that link on there. And of course, I'll have the American Pilgrim link now. Steve, your chairperson role, does that go on another full year, or I don't know how that works.
Well, it depends on what the board votes next week.
I'm sure you have no worries.
Yeah, so I'm elected a year at a time. But,
a year at a time. Wow. I figured it was probably like a 2 or 3 year kind of commitment. So every year.
Well, the board is a 3-year term, and you can serve 2 3-year terms. Officers like the chair, the treasurer, the secretary are 1-year terms, but you can be reelected to that, and that's the threat that's out there now.
Okay.
That's going to happen. So we'll see.
So you have that board meeting coming up here soon.
That's next week. And it's going to be in Lake Tahoe, which is where the gathering is going to be in April.
Very good. I wanted to make sure we said that.
We try to, move at different parts of the country. And so we were in North Carolina this year. So we want to be out west next year. And I don't know. So that's where we had our gathering in March of 2020, which was a gathering to be remembered as the world was closing in around us. And
some great stories from that.
And we had a blizzard. So
yeah,
it's a little later this year. So hopefully no blizzard and hopefully no pandemic. So
yeah.
And again, registration for that will be out probably the first week in January.
Yeah, not far from now.
Sign up early, yeah.
Because it fills up.
Yeah.
Yes, I think this one is going to sell out for sure, because everyone's just, I think, chomping at the bit to get back to our Camino groups and to be able to finally travel again and be together in places is so lovely.
Yeah.
Wow. This has been really, really nice getting to sit down and talk to you guys.
Great to see you,
I want to
Lee.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and just so excited about what you're doing there in Santiago. It was so fun to see you when we were there back in the summer on our way to reading there. Really grateful for that.
Oh, me too. Thank you for that. And that's the joy of being here, is getting to go. I think we had an impromptu get together and then an impromptu road trip out to Ribadiso.
Well, that's the Camino, right? Yeah,
it is.
You just take it as it comes.
Yeah, and I have to pinch myself, like this is my life now, and it's just such a pleasure getting to know people and getting to hear stories. And because to me, this is the part I love about the Camino, right? Is meeting people and getting to hear, how they got to this point and where they're going. And it's been a pleasure hearing more of yours.
And like I said, that's part of the reason we keep going back, because just the stories you hear and the things that people go through, and it's just really exciting.
Yeah, it is. Well, that was my final question: is what's next? Are you guys coming back soon?
We'll probably do something next summer. We haven't figured out. We got a couple of options that we're thinking about. I think we'd probably like to walk again next summer.
Yeah, a different Camino.
There's
so many options that would be fun. The Française is wonderful, but we'd like to try another one probably.
All right. Well, and tell all of our viewers and listeners that we will be playing 20 Camino questions right after we end this segment of our interview. So some of those things will come up in the 20 questions. So if you want to hear their answer as to which route is next, tune into the 20 questions. And also, I will be posting video from our tour at Ribadiso, and it was a lovely day out there. So make sure you check that out. And that will only be available on YouTube. 20 questions, and this interview, of course, will be available on wherever you listen to podcasts as well as on YouTube. So thank you so much for coming to the Camino Cafe and sharing your time and your expertise.
You're welcome. Great to be with you.
Well, thank you. Okay, we'll stay on because we're going to do 20 questions next. Right. And everyone, thank you for joining us. I'm pretty confident that their stories will probably inspire you to walk, and maybe you'll get to meet them if you come and walk.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And go to the gathering.
Yeah, see you there.